what a great break. I had around 10 interesting discussions, and at least 3 times I thought, wow, that's great. We need to further discuss. It's really very impressive. It's always when I'm visiting a blockchain event, it's in the direction like this, but this is outstanding. So congrats. Okay, so I'm happy to be in the position to moderate this panel. And yeah, before we start to discuss the one or other point, I'm going to introduce the panelists. At first, what for me is important is that we, as close as it makes sense, try to bridge what we discuss to the real world, to the real economy, what is the impact of society and so forth. I had some pre-conversations with all the panelists, and I was quite impressed about the single viewpoints, and I'm happy now to discuss this. So let me start to introduce the people on the panel. So next to me it's Elias Haase. I took some words from his website. Elias has been spending the past 10 years in planning, building and running application. His background is in artificial intelligence. Since the early days of Bitcoin, he has been following the progress of blockchain tech and has been gathering experience with smart contracts, trustless computation since late 2014. Welcome, Elias. So next to him is Friederike Ernst from Gnosis, and I selected from a couple of sources. On a LinkedIn profile, I see that she's working in blockchain and prediction market, trained and as a physicist, is this right? Yeah, okay. With several years of research experience in basic science, now running operations at Gnosis. From Twitter, I learned that past experience in research was at Columbia, Stanford, and you were working here in Hamburg as a guest professor. And she's the general secretary, as are very well known, as we are a member of the Blockchain Bundesverband. So perhaps we later on speak a little bit about this as well. From her Twitter timeline, I learned that Gnosis is hiring executive assistants, so it's becoming a real company, senior product manager, community manager, graphic designer, and front-end engineer. Then we have Vincent Everts. From his LinkedIn profile as well, trend watcher and passionate about self-driving electric cars and blockchain conference. And he's running a blockchain conference in Amsterdam, which with a watch you presented, for instance, a talk with Gavin Wood. I looked at. And he enjoys accelerating innovation inside organization. He is a digital trend watcher and public speaker who needs to try everything and then tell everybody about it. He's an entertainer as well, I would add. It's not written anywhere, but I think so. And as said, he's the founder of the Blockchain Innovation Conference in Amsterdam. So, and now, Conny, I miss your card. You are not... Yeah, but this is the questions. There's Conny. Conny from her LinkedIn. Fintech, Insurtech, that is a category she's working about. Anything to build the next era in global finance. Listed on Women and Fintech. Conny Dorrestijn, is it right? Dorrestijn. Dorrestijn, like German, Dorrestijn. Okay. Has worked for over a couple of years. My printer didn't work, 25 years. Cannot be, no? In marketing and business development roles in the international finance technology industry, and she's currently responsible for global payment marketing at the company FIS. So, as I already announced, and I start with Friederike, I said already you are the responsible General Secretary of the Bundesverband Blockchain. So perhaps you first explain about what is Bundesverband Blockchain.
Sure, it's my pleasure. So basically we founded the Bundesverband Blockchain earlier this year because it seems to us that blockchain, it's going to happen. It's going to be a really major thing. And it's not really, it's at the moment, there's a lot of legal uncertainty, which blocks a lot of development. So basically, at the moment, there's almost no regulation. It's not sure in whose purview this actually falls, and we want to change that. We want to make it easier for startups to know that to do the right thing and to know that what they're doing is actually legal, because this actually at the moment is a great impediment for startups in Germany, and they just end up doing their ICOs and their development elsewhere.
Okay, thank you very much. So let me stand here because it's much easier for you if I can see you. So next lady, please. So Conny, you gave me some very interesting statements. What I would like to cite and that you comment about this. So the very first, I think, part of discussion makes sense that we a little bit discuss about state of play. Where's the blockchain today? And what you wrote me is that blockchain is a technology and phenomenon. Is where the internet was pre-browser, and you are happy to discuss or to explain about this, which I think everybody would basically agree. But let's start with this discussion. What is the state of play of blockchain?
Yes, thank you. And I think, in all fairness, welcome by the way. Thank you for having us. I think it circles back to your earlier point when we were talking about disruptors and transformers and optimizers, and we need all three of them in equal. Well, in very different measures, actually. But when I first started my financial study trips to internet banks in the early 90s in South Africa, people were all amazed because they could do all these things with the internet, and you got a browser home on a CD, and then you suddenly could do something. And so the internet by that time was being born like 25, 30 years earlier maybe, and it was used in specific measures by people in academics and experiments. But we only could really do something with it when we had the browser, and it became a tool that people could very easily use. And I think this is a difficult sort of almost turning point for the blockchain, because we're now in a stage where everybody's hyped up about the endless theoretic possibilities. But we're seeing very little happening that people can touch today. And then you're in a danger of splitting out and saying, well, it's only for the hyper smart and for a sort of almost obscure part of society who gets it. And then there's people who don't get it. And that's exactly what this very democratic thing should not do. But yes, so continue to believe in the technology opportunities, but start building very, very quickly on realistic things that people can use, because then you get traction.
I expected that you want to comment on this, yeah? So Vincent.
Well, I mean, I'm old enough that we started with the internet, in 1994, and in 2000 everybody became crazy, and all the investment went crazy, and everything was worth huge money. It's so ICO today. I mean, it's really like we have 900,000 coins coming up. Everybody's rushing because how long will this last? And you have ridiculous business plans which release coins. It takes about half an hour to release a coin. So at the moment, really what blockchain is used for is capital management and basically investing in it and hoping that it will go well. And it is to start businesses with ICO. There is really not happening much at the moment for real. There's we do all kinds of concepts everywhere. We concept ourselves to death inside the big companies, and the smart starters say, "Let me start my coin now before everything crashes." So it's completely 2000, the year 2000 in the internet. So a little bit later than the browser, but I mean, I explain to everybody how to use the blockchain and how to use, how to get a coin, how to buy it, how to go to all these different things, and what to do with your private key. It's unbelievable user unfriendly, right? It's ridiculous. It's Linux. Yeah, so it's for normal human beings, that's really not good. And well, I mean, you hold on your Visa card and. Hooray! Well, I'm from Arnhem, and Arnhem is called the Bitcoin country, Bitcoin city. We have 1,000 people accepting Bitcoin, but it is a really difficult concept at the moment. So we are at the year 2000, so somewhere between that. It will be exciting.
Okay, thank you. So Elias, how do you see it? So your focus with your company B9 Lab is, as I understand, it's to enabling the people to work in that space. You're providing trainings for programmers or basic trainings for Ethereum. For Hyperledger, I was a little bit astonished because the rest was more real blockchain. But how do you see it? What is the state of play of blockchain today?
No, I think it's interesting to see the difference between what's obviously the ICO space and the public releases and how things are being talked about. And then if you look at what companies are actually spending on development, there is a huge difference. And I think with the ICOs, what we'll see in a year or two, or maybe 3, definitely down the line, is that most of these companies are not going to be able to deliver on the crazy ideas they had, which is fine. But also, there is a huge lack of talent. And anyone who's trying to now use the ICO slush fund to hire developers is going to see that. That is actually quite difficult to find the right people. So I don't know. I think it's just a normal process, right? There is a huge hype. Money is sloshing around. There is massive over expectations. You know, the crypto utopia. We're going to solve the world's problems with blockchain. And then there's a valley of tears. Everything is going to crash. And maybe after that, at some point, we can start building actual things.
We can start building.
We can start building today. Maybe we'll be able to use actual things down the line.
So as a moderator, I perhaps should not discuss too much with you, but I would like to add something. My experience is as... I should do it? Okay, let's go for it, yeah. As you know, our company is more or less concentrating on bringing the blockchain to the real economy. And what we did last week is we made a webinar with the biggest organization for logistics called Bundesverband as well, yeah, or Bundesvereinigung in this case. Logistics having 11,000 members, and they basically have an academy as well. We made a webinar. We had over almost 300 people watching this webinar live, which is for webinar not too bad. And what I was most proud of was the total duration was 1 hour, 1 minute, and the average duration was 57 minutes. So the interest is extremely high, yeah. And I know that a lot of company are, let's say, behind the curtain now starting to really think over what could be the right use cases and to work on first proof of concepts and something like this.
But it's proof of concepts. We are still in the experimentation phase. We don't even know what most of this is going to be good for. And I think that's important. If you're going to put your money into this, have an investment horizon, have an expectation horizon that fits the probable development of this.
Yeah. And it's beautiful. All the ideas are coming back. Does anybody remember Second Life? You know, so now there is an ICO of virtual reality country, and there's a coin where you can buy, and it's very funny. I mean, when I organized this conference, 2 months ago, and we had 500 people, so there's audience enough, and we basically bridged the gap between all the insurance companies and the bankers and the energy companies, and all the people who are interested, and on the other hand, the modern generation who pretends to know what's going on. Now, we had a bunch of students helping us, to help the speakers. Turns out that all these students were investing heavily in ICOs. And I am part of their WhatsApp, and they say, wow, this company is completely bullshit. This virtual reality buy land is completely bullshit, but I'm going to put a couple of them in there. And a couple in that discussion is a couple of Bitcoins. And if they say, I'm really going into it, those are students, 19 years old, then they put 30 or 40 Bitcoins in there. Okay. So I said, okay, I'll do 10,000 too, because I think it's completely ridiculous, but I want to participate anyway. Now, in 17 seconds, they raised 24 million. Nobody believed in it. Everybody was just going in there saying, oh, we're going to buy, the coin's going to be on the Bittrex. It's going to go up by a factor of 5 and we're going out there. It's really exciting. All these kids are making these hundreds of thousands of dollars and investing them in all kinds of other stuff. On the other hand, the banks, the insurance companies, the governments, they have shitty IT systems. It's really terrible. Nobody understands how they work anymore. They're completely slow, expensive. Every change costs a lot of money. And they're desperately for a way out and to have systems which have security built in, because that's a nice thing about the blockchain, because it has been tried to hack on every level, and so far 150 billion is functioning really nicely without being hacked. So it is a system with the security built in, and all the banks want it. So everybody is doing proof of concepts like there is no tomorrow, but for very serious things. I mean, we need identity on the blockchain, we need logistics, we need a good system for energy, when we have decentralized energy. So there's real things gonna be changed, but it's all at the beginning phase. The only really application which is now being built for the on the blockchain is other coins. That is the first most successful application on Ethereum, and I think the only application which people are really using.
Okay, understood, and partly agree. Let's put this topic aside for a moment at least. Yeah, a question, please.
I have like one remark or slash question, which we have also discussed over lunch, is I think that the crypto coins are the only use case at this very moment because of the data mining, which is actually proving that what is there is actually true at that moment. And this is the only way how you can then afterwards have this whole chain of that it's actually true, and because this is the main thing, right? That it's really 5 coins that you are putting over there. While in the real world, how will you all ever get this proof that what actually someone is putting in there is actually true? And once you have put it in there, which shit in, shit out, which we had before, once it's in there, it needs to be true and it needs to stay true and it needs to go through there. So my question is, what do you think about it? Like, how in the real world can you overcome this topic of, like, how do you do the data mining of not like crypto coins, but any other information in order to make sure it's actually true?
Oh, there's there are signed data feeds out there that, for instance, Bloomberg has a signed data feed that we use as a so-called oracle to decide whether something happened or not in the real world.
Okay, so I think we didn't mention at the beginning, it's great if you have questions, simply raise your hand and we include it, so it's not that everything shall be fixed here, so thank you very much for starting the questionnaire here. And by the way, we have a lot of other digital assets like copyright also, yeah, where we don't have this this challenge to bring together the real world and the digital world. I would like to leave this for a moment at least and come back to let's say a more broader picture. As I asked you in the beginning, in the preparation phase, I would like to understand how you see it. What are the mega changes? And Friederike, I liked very much that you said, well, blockchain is way harder to censor anything, and it's also way harder to regulate anything. And this is both good and potentially real dangerous. Yeah. So can you explain a little bit about this one?
Okay, sure. So in the offline world, in the off-chain world, you have to do a lot of things as a physical person, and even if you don't actually have to do them as a physical person, you do it, for instance, by transacting money from your bank account to another bank account, and there are regulations in place that have been there for a long time, things like KYC, know your customer, and AML, anti-money laundering measures that are put in place. It's really hard to actually do something anonymously in the off-chain world, in the offline world. And this becomes different in the on-chain and online world. So basically because in principle, in principle it's possible to track a lot of where the funds are going. It's difficult to be truly anonymous, even on the blockchain, but it's a lot harder to enforce. And the capabilities just aren't there at the moment. So this common notion that on the blockchain anything goes, I don't think it's actually happening, because I think it's made out to be more Wild Wild West than it actually is. So I don't think there actually are assassination markets. But yes, in principle, this is possible, and it's a real danger that these actually become operable. And we, as a society, absolutely should worry about this.
I agree. And
we've also learned that governments are not powerless. You know,
yes.
It takes them a while to figure out what the hell's going on. And I mean, with internet we saw that. But I don't know how it's in Germany, But we had in my conference, we have there's this proof of concept of the Dutch government. We have 24 different projects with identity, with real estate, with political, with voting, and they're all and the financial side. And they have created the Netherlands, the Dutch, the central bank has created the guilder, and they're all experimenting because they have all these shitty IT systems where security is layers on layers on layers, making it practically unusable. So they want to reinstall everything. They're much more enthusiastic, and their knowledge is going up, and they also are not shy about, when you have the chain and the off chain, and when real money enters that system, you have an incredible amount of regulation coming. I mean, if you want to buy Bitcoin, who has bought Bitcoin here? Okay. And who thought it was a pain in the butt? If you want to buy more than €1,000, they want to do video conferencing. They want to have your passport. They want to have everything. And then when there's when you send money to one other person, that other person, you go to blockchain.info, you see every transaction that person has done. It's really weird. It's very public, the blockchain, and it's very anonymous. It's really, but the governments are have full trust that they can handle this kind of stuff. It's really, they don't feel shy about it.
I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah. So Vincent, I expected it will be a challenge for me to have a balanced conversation here that everybody is the same speech time. But thanks very much. This is very valid. Yeah, we discussed before. Anyway, so Conny, when we stick to the challenges and the problems which need to be solved, you're very deep into money market, and there of course things like scalability, speed of transaction, and so on are definitely an issue. Yeah?
Yes, I am with FIS now, and 14 years ago we were probably not a disruptor, but we were definitely a transformer when we built payment hubs, and they're now state of the nation. And obviously the good news is that then a big company comes and eats you up and buys you. So payments is sort of my daily life. And whenever the blockchain comes along, and people first confuse it with Bitcoin, and then they started talking payments. But you should never forget that in the other non-blockchain world, life goes on as well. And so we get new technologies that replace WebSphere and all sorts of IBM stuff that required banks to incredibly invest in big computer parks just to do payments processing. But most of the payments processing you do, 80% of it is very mundane, batch processed payments. And even if we go real time, it's very simple. And the blockchain, where it is today, and the technology it is, and what it can offer, is way too complicated, too complex, and most importantly, too slow. And I just had a real laugh because at his conference, there was a guy proudly saying that he could do an international money transfer, and you would get a statement of confirmation within 10 minutes. Well, I've got news for you, mate. The whole world is moving real time, and countries like India, China are completely live. Europe is gearing up for 2018. America is still, as always, discussing and lobbying about it. The UK has had it for many, many years. And the target there is initiate, clear and settle a payment within 5 seconds. So the blockchain is, I think at this moment in time, we should look at what it's really good at. And it's all about the trust element, the public element, and the need to share a lot of complex data with a lot of people. And most payments just don't meet that. So forget it. Do it for very high value, complex international payments that happen once a day. Fine. But if you want to apply blockchain now, you would melt the ice layer at the North Pole faster with doing all payments processing now on the blockchain than the way we do it today. So, and again, it's improving. So,
Friederike would like to add something to this.
Well, I think you're addressing several problems here. One of them is the energy consumption that the mining actually eats up, and that's a huge problem. So basically,
I'm not making. No. She's getting no. I'm talking about the processing power. You just basically need to do payments.
Yes.
And very low. On an old system now, you do it faster and cheaper than you could do it on blockchain technology.
That's not true. So it is true for the status quo, and basically it's.
That's what we're talking about.
No, are we not talking
No,
about
we
the
are.
future?
We are not only looking backwards and today. So what should be possible? Let's say this year, next year, something like this.
Okay, so basically the energy consumption of Bitcoin mining is on par with the country of Croatia. This is how much energy it takes to mine the Bitcoins. So basically, doing one Bitcoin transaction is a day and a half of air conditioning for an American house. That's how much energy it takes. And that's because of this proof of work. And I think the introduction lady, I forgot her name, she actually talked about, Yes, exactly. No. Simone, yes. Simone, she talked about switching from proof of work to proof of stake. And this is going to happen. So basically, that's going to get much, much better. Obviously, then you face different set of problems. So basically, who is allowed to be a validator, which at this point in time is just being, it's just a random. It's just a random factor. We will actually have to find better consensus protocols for that, and it's being worked on. It's called Casper on Ethereum. And the second thing that you were saying is that it's too slow, which is true. So the number of transactions per second is 4 orders of magnitude smaller than it is for Visa transactions. So basically, that is a huge problem, and also people are working on that on the scalability. So basically, the idea is that not everything actually has to be on-chain on the one blockchain, but that you have state channel solution or off-chain solutions, and this is a very active area of research, and it's going to happen, and it's going to happen next year.
First,
I hope
so great. Thank you for the explanation. I would like to ask Elias, because I think you're very deep in technology as well. Would you like to add something about this? Otherwise, we will continue with you as well, because you're. Okay, great.
No, but obviously very little has been said, but I think it would, having a conversation about the consensus protocols, etc., is maybe a bit too far out the scope of the panel.
Okay. So if you
important things have been
if you look, because you're, as I understood, looking at your website, learning about you seem to be, like Friederike as well, very much into technology as well. So what is your expectation, not looking at the technology now, but what can be used and be really helpful in the real world of blockchain, let's say, in the next 2 years? If you want to speak about real use cases, that would be great, or industry examples.
This depends. This depends what you mean with blockchain. So I would separate this out into different areas. First of all, we have the public blockchains, which is what we've been talking about this whole time, which is the real blockchain, if you want, which is how it was proposed in the first Bitcoin white paper, and is contains it is decentralized. So on there, I think you'll probably be able to say more about it as well. I mean, I think that prediction markets are something that's interesting to look at. Parametric insurance, things that we've already seen. Clearly keeping track of stuff. So chain of custody, chain of ownership, those kind of things. Land records. So everything that needs to be highly available and needs to be stored in a way that can't be tampered with. I think we're going to see that, and obviously new business models, etc. Very likely. And then there is everything that's happening on taking parts of the technology and applying that to an enterprise environment, or to just a less decentralized environment. So. One of the key elements of blockchain technology is cryptographically secured data chains. That's work that goes back to 91, 94, and obviously before that. So this is the idea that I'm using cryptographic hash functions, one-way cryptographic hash functions, to create data chains where I can then use a single hash to prove the integrity of the whole chain. So this is when most companies talk about blockchain and using blockchains internally, that's kind of what they're talking about, because they want to be, it is about ledger security and ledger integrity, right?
Industrial workflow?
Yeah,
more or less?
Generally, making sure that your internal ledger is, that you know what's going on in your internal ledger, which is a huge problem for banks as well, not
Yeah, of
knowing
course.
what's happening in your own ledger. So I think there is a whole bunch of things happening there, but it's not necessarily blockchain in the sense of that we were talking about now. It's just using aspects of blockchain technology and applying them for greater efficiency internally.
Okay. Vincent, what do you see as the upcoming things now?
Well, I mean, we drove in here in Hamburg and we saw an incredible harbor, okay? And you have a fantastic harbor.
And you drank nice coffee, as I could read on your Twitter account.
Pardon? What?
You had nice coffee. You posted.
Oh, well, that was with the charge when we had to charge. I had to take her to McDonald's, which was a little bit, which was perfect. Fantastic. But I mean, we went into Hamburg and we saw the big harbor. If you see logistical processes, it has become unbelievable efficient because of the container. But the information which is behind there to get a container from here to there and how many parties have to be involved in it is incredibly complicated, and to have hundreds of different IT systems next to it. So in the Rotterdam, we also have a little port in Rotterdam, and we do a few 100 million of these containers. And there they basically have the port of Rotterdam and the customs and the big transporters and and they all have created a private blockchain, so it's, I mean, everything I've talked about, which people use in companies is mostly private because, or consortiums. I mean, so are free and those kinds of things. But I mean, everything is normally not on the public blockchain. But they are making a whole chain to get all that information in a secure way in there, and that you're sure that that information is right. And that security is to build into the system. So what you're saying there, that we use for logistical processes. For me, the biggest thing we need to solve is identity. We need to come up, we have now, I don't know if you know it, but the Dutch are making our identity systems. Estonia is number one. They have a fantastic identity system and everything is one big cloud society. Now the Dutch are starting with that. The Germans are starting with that. Everybody in Europe is now making a digital identity system. And in 2019, they have to all be compatible with each other. We have to accept the German ID systems for anything you want to do securely in Holland, and you have to accept our systems. We also have to accept the Italian systems, which is going to be interesting. We need to have a blockchain identity system, and we need to make sure that I can be the judge of my own identity, and that I can have banks putting more trust on it, or LinkedIn, or other business people. And who's going to build that? Who are we going to have, to build that identity system? Because without identity, we have a big missing link, and I'm really curious who's going to do that.
Friederike, as you are in the prediction market, you can predict how this will look like.
Yeah, so sadly there are no predictions live yet, so it's,
Okay.
we'll have to wait on that.
Any comments, any idea about how can this be done?
I see that the identity is a huge part of the fundamentals of making the blockchain usable. And I see that there are a couple of very interesting projects in this space.
Nice ICOs. Everywhere.
Yeah, so there are ICOs right and left, but there are actually very interesting projects who are working on very viable things.
Like?
So,
Like Kenosis?
Well, and they are so interesting, I think, because intrinsically in them, they have what you need. Because an ID is one thing, but an ID without a reputation is nothing. ID is nothing, it's who I am. What's important to somebody who wants to do business with me is my reputation. That's much more important than who I am. And I think that the whole aspect that I cannot erase certain elements of my history, if it's on the blockchain, and the open nature, because you can probably, to a degree yourself, they say, okay, you can scrape information out of my social accounts. You may visit the people on LinkedIn and chat to me. After PSD2, which is now the new law, where the banks have to shoot holes in their own infrastructure, basically the bank can give them data. And so without having to go through endless processes when you apply either for a new house or whatever you do, you get a very lively and active position on my reputation and my identity. And I think that as we move more online, building a reputation is very, very going to be extremely important. I think the blockchain is very good for that, because you cannot. Well, you know, we disagree on this, so let's have the fight we had in the car. I actually think that, and let me phrase this correctly, a very intelligent bank, that doesn't need to be a bank that exists today, but it could be, a very intelligent bank should see that it has moved from being a custodian of our money to a custodian of our values. Now it's moving, after PSD2, it's moving to becoming a custodian of our data. And I think a very intelligent bank gears itself up to become a custodian of my reputation. And so I think banks, you know, with the new regulation that's coming in, people are well protected, and banks could be a very good channel to deliver that reputational service.
So Elias wanted to add something to this, and before you do so, please prepare for your questions. We have a little bit less than 10 minutes left. I would more or less include you now if you want. Otherwise, I have. But please comment on this.
Yes. So I would recommend to the reputation question. Has anyone read Down and Out in the Magic Kingdom by Cory Doctorow? Anyone? Go and read it. And if you're not horrified about reputation afterwards, I don't know what to do. Down and Out in the Magic Kingdom by Cory Doctorow.
Okay.
Well worth reading as a kind of sci-fi treatment on reputation. So it's a kind of futurist society where reputation, you know, that you will not die, you will be taken care of, you are immortal, but your access to the pleasures of life is regulated by how much reputation you have. So people can give you tokens, and just read it. So I think there is a huge, massive risk and threat around you know, using reputation and having a reputation available, you know, and being locked into a system. And I think the other thing that I always find uncomfortable with this, and especially around these systems with Bitcoin, so with blockchain. So we have a mix of network effects, regulation, and a technology that makes it very hard to reverse things and make changes. And ultimately, if you then look down, you know, a lot of people assume that infrastructure is neutral and non-political, but it really, really isn't. So an event like this is an example for that, because, you know, usually in the tech space and blockchain, it's a hugely homogeneous group. So the people who build the infrastructure all look very, very similar, and they have a very similar culture. So the thing that I always worry about is we are planning to put a lot of stuff on the infrastructure, but the infrastructure is implemented, planned, and built by a very homogeneous group that are making it fit their own experiences, right?
It's not a normal
Okay.
Really
No,
not. So
it is not.
The
but
thing that I want to
Yeah.
we move on, the thing that I want to that I like to call for. I'm a developer by training, but we are not being challenged enough. So I would like to ask everyone from all walks of life, from all different backgrounds, to come in, crash our party, and demand a seat at the table. Because that's really, really important. We're just doing things somewhere
both
in a
statements.
back
Really, I
room,
like this,
right?
yeah.
Just come and fuck things up for us, and ask us questions, and demand that we tell people why we do things the way we do them, and also that we can become aware of our own blind spots.
Great.
It's super important.
Yeah, thank you very much. So let's hurry up with some questions. One question is here.
Thank you. Well, first of all, I agree about the reputation aspect and an eternal repository of your entire reputation. It's so subjective. It's a bit frightening to me.
It happens today.
Yeah, but I mean,
And then you're not in control. You're better in control of your own. It's happening today. People are making your reputation everywhere, in every system, and falsely and based on old information, not transferable, not movable, not accessible. It's happening now.
well, you have data privacy issues, right to be forgotten. But my question has to do with, so processes take a long time now because there are actual people involved. When you talk about streamlining land registers and bank processes and ships, there's a lot of people involved that will no longer have jobs. And in 2030, 2035, if you're saying we're at where the internet was in 2000 and 2035, does the industry or does someone have an obligation to all those people, a social responsibility to address that? I mean, jobs will only be created so quickly. These people have been trained and have been educated for something that is no longer relevant, and yeah, I mean, where are these if no one has any money, where are the transactions going to come from?
May I answer that?
Yeah, of course.
So I think, of course, society has an obligation towards people who are going to do with their jobs, but I think this putting jobs as the holy cow, I think that's a fallacy. I mean, work needs to be done. It doesn't matter who does the work. If people's lives are made easier because their jobs are being executed by machines, then good for society. I mean, we just have to find a different way of spreading the wealth that is being created through having machines do stuff for us.
Okay.
I mean, this links into the universal basic income.
I agree. Yeah, but the problem is that we have further questions. Yeah, so we can further discuss in the break. So I would like to at least add another 2 or 3 questions. Vincent, yeah, is okay? Thank you.
Hi to all, I'm Markus. We are in the e-charging business, and we are thinking about to generate coins for payment of all the e-mobility stuff. So, what technology did you suggest me, or is that a good idea or is it a bad idea?
It's fine for every day. Well, that really depends. That depends on so many things. So. Don't put anything don't put any processes onto a blockchain where you lose control and you go to jail for it. It's not worth it. If you're looking into ledger security and you want to improve internal efficiency, it might be interesting to look into public blockchains. Okay. But the answer is it depends. But I'm sure there are a few people here you can hire to look into your project and do a review.
So not only Gnosis is hiring. Yeah? Okay. So that's what's the next question?
Thank you.
No, this one. Okay.
You can
One of the next questions then. Yeah. And individual talks are welcome.
Sorry, Vincent, this is more for Conny. But
Much better.
I guess I have 2 comments related to what you said before. One is you said, banks are, need to move what they're doing, but why do we need them at all? I mean, that's one question. And then going back to what you said before about, the guy was so happy that he could do a transaction in 10 minutes, but watch out because we're coming soon with faster.
It's happening
right?
already, just not in Europe.
So, but the point is that's still between banks. So that's still between somebody else that's got my stuff. So
but there are 2 things. First is the underlying idea around blockchain and Bitcoin, which is basically a different sort of sense of power distribution and wealth distribution. That's one element. In that context, of course, if you go and do real-time payments with banks, you still work with banks. And you can have a long theoretical and practical debate, but I can assure you one thing: if we get another crash like 2008, everybody wants to have the bank system again, in a funny way, because their monies, their normal euro monies and dollar monies that they pay with today, are secured up to a level. Now, for a very bright part of society at the moment who have access to all this knowledge and understanding and who go into bitcoins, etc., and who can buy stuff with it or put extra money aside, but I'm talking about the normal people in the street who need to get a job, who get their money in and need to pay groceries. These people want to have access to society and to the economic system. And to this day, it happens with banks. I am not sure that we're going to have banks in the way they operate now in even 10 years' time. But at the moment, we have them. And the technology that we now use for processing large batches of payments works. It is not a problem. And it works in many, many countries. India is the big leader. It works in real time, and it works for a lot of people. So it's very easy to bash banks. But I think that the blockchain we should use that technology to solve new world problems and different areas, not optimize to go from a processing cost from 10 cents to 6 cents or to go slightly faster. I think that's a waste of a technology that has a lot of brain and passion behind it, and we should use it in that direction, like Everts does. It takes blood diamonds out of the market as well as
Conny?
giving financial problems.
Conny? The remaining time is thank you very much, is for Vincent. And I know you're friends, so you should stay friends. Okay. So very last question. Either last question to Vincent, or Vincent can finally comment on the points you wanted to comment. No question, Vincent. So you had a comment on the identity answer and on the answer after that.
Well,
so 2 minutes.
For example, your thing, you're working on electric charging. I mean, I'm coming here with a Tesla. I'm really sorry to do that in Germany because I know how much you hate that kind of stuff. And
my son loves Tesla.
But in 10 years, all these cars will be electric, and the new cars will be electric. In 20 years, it will be, and they will also drive themselves. Now, one of the most interesting coin presentations I saw at our conference was somebody says, we're going to make an electric EV coin, and we're going to basically sell a lot of these coins. We're going to buy a fleet of 1,000 cars in Amsterdam. These cars are going to drive everybody around. They're going to pay themselves for electricity and for maintenance. And when they have more money, they're going to buy more cars. And in the end, there's enough cars, and then they generate cash. And then that's a smart contract, which is going to generate money for the basic income. I mean, that's your question. What's going to happen? I mean, about 60% of the people are going to lose their job in the next 15 years because of automation and smart systems. And we have automated our bodies, we've automated the factories, we're now automating our brain. 60% of people will lose their job, and we need, and then Silicon Valley says, we can only solve this with a basic income, which I agree, which we will do in Holland, which we'll do in Germany, but America won't do it. My kids are American, I'm married to an American, I can tell you the 1% who's organizing everything is going to get all the money. But we are going to make a smart contract where these cars are going to do all the public transportation door to door in a very effective way. And when they generate more cash, it's going to be for all the people who are going to lose their jobs, millions and millions, because there is no job for drivers anymore. We need to think about this, and we need to take decisions.
Do you want to know what first of all, thank you very much. Do you want to know what I promised Anja? And I broke the promise. I promised her to be in time. I'm 1 minute late. I want to thank all of you very much. It was a pleasure and an honor to moderate this, both statements, and enjoy the time and good remaining day.